Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, no matter what time of the day it is for you. And we want to welcome you to this week's broadcast of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. And today, what we're going to do, we're going to have a conversation. And we'd love for you to join in this conversation. All you have to do is type your comments into the chat bar, and we'd love to discuss them and hear your input onto it. So, anyway, as we go forward, the subject matter we're going to talk about today is where will you be in 2022? As we look at 2021 and 2020, it's been a time of a lot of turmoil, a time of a lot of changes. And I can bet you, if you look back at the beginning of 2021, you had no idea where you would be today. So, Brandi, what's your thought on looking forward into 2022?
Well, we have to plan for the future. And the best time to do that really is now. We're right between that Thanksgiving, Christmas holiday, where we have a little bit more downtime, so to speak, to think about what we want to accomplish in 2022. And we'll talk about today, but what some of those things are. But you have to have goals for 2022, or you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to stay just like you were in 2021, and you're just going to kind of float along and take things as they come.
That's it. Sheryl, what's your thoughts about 2022 as we go into today's episode?
I'm like Brandi. I'm going to add on to the goals thing. That's where a lot of my training came in, was on goals. And I don't think people set the goal until the football's kicked. And so we need to start now, because without moving forward, and that's what this whole program is going to be about, is hopefully to bring you into that concept of getting your goals set, because it's only 1 month until we get into 2022.
So kickoff's a little over a month away, so stick around with us. We're going to play our intro. We'll be right back with you. Now watch close as you see this, and watch how much you see Brandi and Sheryl laughing in this our intro promo here. As you look at that, I notice Larry Wingett's holding up one finger like, I want to make a point right now as you look through there. But as you actually look at it, that's a lot of shots of a lot of the shows that we've done on our broadcast here. And if you look, we brought a lot of superstars to the table. And in the coming weeks ahead, we got some more lined up. We'll tell you about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks at the end of today's episode. But like Sheryl said a while ago, it's all about the kickoff. And the kickoff starts in a little over a month. And what any great team's going to do, they're going to be fully prepared as they go into that kickoff ready to go. So the first thing I'm going to share with you is something that Sheryl and I just went through right before this call, Brandi. And what we did is we had a call with one of our coaches, a guy by the name of Scott McCain. You may have heard us talk about him before. But anyway, what we were talking about was the challenges that we're facing right now, actually a couple different challenges, because even coaches have challenges and coaches have coaches. And before I go further, I got to also give Brandi congratulations, because her and Jeremy both just got their certification as business leadership coaches. So that's a big thumbs up, because that shows how dedicated she is to being the best. Not only that, she's going through some really intensive certification over something else right now that we're going to be announcing before long, but it's going to take some more hours of work for her to get there, but she's getting there. And all this is to prepare to be better. But, as we went through this, it was kind of like one of the things that Scott shared with us, which is, Brandi, I'm going to kind of play with you for a minute here. Are you a sports fan by chance? Is there any sports that you follow?
Not at all.
Okay, what about Jeremy? Is he a football, baseball fan?
UFC. He's a huge UFC fan. That's it.
Okay, so he's a huge UFC fan, which is the fighting. That's where they get into it, and they beat up each other on national television, and people come. Jeremy goes all the way to Las Vegas to watch them slug it out in there, and I know that's one of his things. But there's always a coach in that corner. It's going to be someone that coaches them to get there. And that's one of the things that Scott talked about today, how sports teams have people to help to coach them to get better. If you look at it, there's a lot of sports figures and they're kind of trained from birth. We'll take that. You got, I'm sure you've seen them, Brandi, and Sheryl has too. Parents that think their son is going to be the next quarterback for the football team and all this, or they're going to be in Major League Baseball and they're going to be a home run hitter, they're going to be a pitcher, they're going to be make the all-star team and all that. But what do these people do is they go through continuous coaching and they have to keep wanting to get better. And I think that's one of the things I see in sports a lot of times is this, we see professional athletes and they've reached this level and all of a sudden it seems like they lose their focus. All of a sudden they get directed into looking at political things, looking at things that are happening in the world, and actually their performance drops from that point. So that's one of the things I would share with you of how to get into the next year. Number one, you need to be tracking and measuring everything that's going on in your business right now. If you're in the hearth, the chimney, the vending industry, the fall is not the time that you're going to be making changes. But what you should do every single day, and hopefully you have the software to enable you to be able to do this tracking and measuring and seeing what's working, what isn't working. And then in the first quarter, that's where you're going to start implementing the things that you see need to be done. So Sheryl, I'm going to go to you next. What do you see? What's your thoughts into this discussion right now?
Well, I think people tend to not think ahead. I think they're scared to death of what the next thought would bring. And yes, in this particular business that we're in, it's the wrong time of the year to really put a lot of effort into implementing anything. But everyone wants to stalemate. They want to procrastinate. And that's one of the things that we're always looking for is what makes you procrastinate so much? Is it a lack of wanting to do it? Or is it a lack of accepting that it's got to be done? And the bad part is we're coming down to like we were talking, we're coming down to the line right now. These businesses do not have that much longer to procrastinate before they get their thoughts together. So pen and pencil to me are the best way to do it. Just make yourself some notes, mind map, get it out.
Okay. So Brandi, what's your thoughts on this? As you look at this, what would you tell people to be doing to be prepared to where you want to go next year?
Well, Sheryl brought up a good point with the procrastination. Let's say I want to go to Mexico on a vacation. I'm not just going to wake up tomorrow and have my plane tickets and have my passport and have my hotel room and all of the travel accommodations. That's not going to happen, right? I have to plan if I want to take a vacation. It's no different than your business. You have to see where do you want your business to go, and you have to plan and make steps to get there. I wrote down, Jerry, some key steps that I think that these are the things that I look at in my business and that I encourage my clients to look at in their business. And there's about 12 of them. The first one is your software. Take a look at your software that you used in 2021. I hope I can say a tiny swear word on this show, but
you can. We are not up to FCC regulations.
I do an exercise with my CSRs that I work with one-to-one where they do what went well, what went to hell. And so I encourage business owners, this is a really good place to start. What did we do well in 2021 and what went to hell and we've got to fix it? So look at your software systems. Did they work for you? Is there something else that you need to add, or maybe there's something you need to take away? What is your budget? And this is, of course, a big one, for us, Jerry. A lot of people don't think about what their budget is going to be for 2022. They don't sit down and say, I want to allot this much to marketing. I want to allot this much to hiring. I want to allot this much to benefits. Benefits is a third thing. Take a look at your benefits. See if there's anything you need to add, take away. Make sure it's still working for you and your company size. Shop your insurance. This is a huge one. And it goes not just for your insurance, it goes for your phone service. It goes for everything in that office. You need to be shopping around to make sure you are still getting the best deal, to make sure you still have the appropriate coverage that your business needs. Company size. Maybe you're looking to retire and you want to take the company down in size. Maybe you're wanting to grow the company. Jerry, one of the things that we talk about on here a lot is people, seem to get in everybody else's boat. Sheryl and I were talking about boats before this. And they want to be like them and they try to emulate them and follow them. You have to do what's right for you and your company. And this is where you need to really take an individual approach. Look at your marketing. Did it work last year? Is there some place you need to increase it? Are you tracking it, as you said, Jerry? What is your training? And I'm ongoing and new. So what training did you do that's ongoing? And what new training do you want to add in 2022? Maybe you want to become a heat shield dealer and you're going to take heat shield training. I have also challenged all of my CSRs that I work with this year to go to their managers, owners of the company, and ask for a training budget, and then pick out classes that they're going to take in 2022 specific to the office. So I have some that are going to take Excel classes. I have some office managers that are going to take office management classes. My office manager is going through a class in January. But we can't grow if we don't continue to learn. You're personally, as you as the owner and the employee, you need to look at this. So sometimes we think, well, I'm going to send my employees to training, but I don't need training as the owner because I already know everything. And that's not true. And this is where a coach can come in and help you and identify areas where you may be weak in and you may need training. Company mission statement and core values. And this is one that we've talked about in the past, but I think people, maybe they wrote a mission statement 15 years ago and that's their mission statement. The world has changed, as you said, Jerry. We are not living in the same world we were 15 years ago. You need to look at that mission statement every single year and evaluate it. The other thing that comes along with that people leave out is your company values. What are your company values? And you need to have those written down and posted everywhere. Your fleet. What worked well for your fleet in 2021? What do you need to do in 2022? I know us personally in my company, we're having a really hard time because there is not inventory out there. We need to add 2 more trucks. And every time that Jeremy goes online to buy one, it's already taken. Do you have the right tools? Are your fleets organized appropriately? And then I'd like you to look at something personal / work. So maybe you're the business owner and you're used to working 60 hours a week and you want to cut that down to 50 hours a week this year. How are you going to do that? How are you going to be able to leave work on time? What does that look like? But this all requires sitting down and mapping it out.
Yeah. So Sheryl, after listening to all the things that Brandi just brought, what did that bring to your mind? You're really good at listening to others and then developing ways and words to take it to another step. What all did you just gain from what Brandi shared?
Well, as you know, I'm a big factor in training. I think that's one of the most important things. If you did it last year, you didn't do enough. I don't care what level you took it to, you were not there. Till I see some multi-million-dollar companies rolling with a full stream of employees, I just don't think it's done. We've also brought up coachability. Are you in the next year coming up going to be able to open up yourself to be coached? Because like Jerry said, we just got through with one of our coaches and they're invaluable. I mean, you just cannot go without them. I mean, I use Brandi a lot of times. Brandi uses me. We leave Jerry out of quite a bit, but we know his answer. So we kind of do each other on the sideline, but coaches need their coaches. And the one thing is that I'm wanting to ask everybody is something that we heard from one of our coaches. What you are wanting, you see it, but what are you willing to give up to get it? If you're needing more training, are you willing to give up private time to get it? If you're looking for, as Brandi is, new trucks, that money's got to come from somewhere. What are you willing to give up? What part of that budget can you lower? And the main thing for me to get into people's mind is always be willing to change directions with the times. Because as 2020 hit us, we all realized that things can change on a dime. We saw it flip and we had to back up and make new steps. So make your plans, but don't get so ingrained in them that you can't shift.
Yeah. And Sean Kramer just made a great post there. These are all super great points to talk about. I'm happy that our business is already talking about these, but we definitely need to add some. And Sean's a guy, he's making some really drastic decisions that he's going to be going into. I had a conversation with him earlier this week. So Sean's got some big things coming down the pike of what's going to happen for him in the coming years to move him closer to that dream destination. But Brandi, as you were talking, I felt back about some of my recent client visits of what I'm going through, because that's what coaches do. We hear about the frustrations and we work and help people get through the challenges. You talked about trucks. One of my clients is ordering 2 trucks right now, knowing they're not going to get them for quite a period of time. And they don't need those 2 trucks right now. But rather what they're doing is they're bringing it in. They've got their numbers to the point that they can support this. It's not going to be, it's coming out of reserves that they built, just like you and Jeremy. So they're going to go ahead and get these trucks rolling. And also they're carrying heavy inventories. And that's a fear right now, getting your stuff. I was talking to a distributor just this morning about this. And there's real big issues out there in the supply system. And I posted this onto my Facebook page before. It's about how containers are sitting in the ocean right now and can't get unloaded. Some of these container ships now have 16,000 to 24,000 containers on them. They don't even fit under some bridges. They can't just dock anywhere. And earlier today, I actually talked to a gentleman and sent a reference to Sheryl, because one of her challenges is logistics and shipping and pallets or skids. So actually, I have a network connection that handles, believe it or not, plastic pallets. And I had a conversation with him this morning about this and set up Sheryl has a call with him because she buys a lot of pallets. See, this is the whole thing. Yeah, a lot of times you're on the end and you get pallets and you don't know what to do with them. But on the other side, the people that are shipping on the pallets, they have to procure these pallets. And that's a cost factor. In fact, Sheryl, I think you said, how much did you tell me you had just ordered in pallets this week? What was the dollar figure?
Almost $2,400 just in pallets.
Right.
And that won't last long.
Right. So as you look, a lot of times you see people with pallets sitting behind their house. They say, hey, here's some free pallets. Come get them. Brandi, I'm sure that y'all end up with pallets and skids sitting there just wishing someone had them. At the same time, there's a woman that needs them, but getting them from Kansas City to Concord is not real inexpensive. So putting them on a truck, it just don't work. So now looking at this, maybe plastic pallets may be for the answer for her, and seeing so they have a meeting set up for Monday. That's how she's looking at it. Here's another big one. And this is something coming out of the HVAC side of the blue collar, which is I have one client that is going to have a full-time trainer in his company next year. Okay. So what he's doing, in fact, I sent him an email today about all the things that have got to be done in order to make this an effective program that produces, because this means we've got somebody that's going to be involved in training on a daily basis. And when I look on Facebook, if we look at this, and some of the people that we've interviewed before, such as Tommy Mello, Al Levy, and other people, how this in-house training is going to move you to the next level. In fact, our guest next week, I'll talk about him in a little bit, but 10 years ago, he told me that one of the things he was going to have to do, as what he had discovered, he had to become a trainer for his business, because training is an ever ongoing thing. I mean, Brandi, have you anticipated who you may not have a year from now? Is that going through a thought process? I know you're really good about doing what we call stay interviews and predicting when this is going on. And this might not be a bad time for you to briefly go over what is a stay interview, because this could be something good for the end of the year. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So a stay interview, you guys all hear us talk about exit interviews, so that the employee leaves and now we're doing an exit interview to say, what did you like here? What were you unhappy about? What could we have done differently? A stay interview, the whole point of it is you're being proactive rather than reactive. And so you're sitting them down and asking a lot of questions to make sure and see that they're happy and see where their head's at. And you can ask them directly, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to be here in a year? You're asking them, what is the best day that you ever had here look like? What is the worst day that you ever had here look like? What is the one thing that the one chore that if you didn't have to do it, the one job, you wouldn't do it? There's a gigantic list of questions, and you can kind of tailor them to fit your business needs. But the whole point behind it, again, is being that proactive rather than reactive and getting a temperature on your employees.
Right. And I ran a recent poll on one of the Facebook forums that I moderate, and it was all about what was your leading challenge in business? In other words, and I kind of phrase it, if you could put this challenge behind you tomorrow, what would it be? And the top rated one by far was the hiring challenge. So again, as we continue through this, it takes without people, Brandi, where would Blues Brothers be if you didn't have any people working there?
Well, I don't think it would exist because my husband doesn't really do ladders and scaffolding anymore.
Right. It basically wouldn't exist. What you have, the number one asset, what you sell is the services for your people. So Sheryl, let's move back to you. This is one of your areas of expertise. You hire people for other companies. You do interviews every day, sometimes all day long. So tell us, what do you see coming down the pike, or what's happening on the recruitment side? What are you seeing the numbers upping? Are they dropping? Are they getting more scarce? What's the quality of the applicants that you're seeing in your interview process right now for your clients?
Well, up to this past week, or this week actually, or the ending of last week, they were increasing quite a bit. I was getting more and more applicants than I've gotten in a long time. Knowing the holidays was coming up, I knew there would be a sharp drop. There has been. Today, it started back up. I basically filled the whole week up next week, this evening. But the thing about it is the quality seems to be a little bit better. People are getting a little more serious about a job. I saw this happening, and I'm hoping it's not holiday related, but I saw this happening last year right before Christmas. Everybody was looking for that job to try to get some Christmas presents, and you can weed that out really quick. So after the New Year's, they could leave. But the thing is the quality. I've probably come near replacing more this past week before last than I have in the past 6 months.
Well, I know one of your clients, he's got 4 people. The other day when I talked to him, he has 4 new people going through his intensive training program right now. So it is coming on. But this also brings me to another thought, which is one of the people that I follow, and Sheryl and I have actually had as a coach before, is Randy Pennington. And Randy Pennington's a very wise guy, and he works for a lot of Fortune 500 companies, coaching, doing consulting work. So he shared an article the other day, and it was all about the recruitment challenge of 2021 that we've been into, that we've all been fighting really hard. And the article was entitled, "Why Are People Leaving Their Jobs in Record Numbers?" And here's the answer: because they can. Because they can. Because in today's world, all of a sudden it's getting very common that people are now resigning from a job without a job to go to. Brandi, are you seeing that in your applicants, that people have resigned a company and do not have a job that you're interviewing?
Yes, they do not usually get hired by me because I don't want to hire someone that is willing to do that. But yes, I have definitely interviewed people that have come through, and they have families, and I'm just always sitting there kind of in shock, wondering how they did that.
Yeah, because I couldn't imagine that. Whenever I was an employee for many years, which I have not always been self-employed, I was in the printing business at one time. And did I change jobs quite a bit? Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I did, because I saw opportunities. But I never resigned a job until I had another job to go to the next day. In other words, if my last day here was Friday of this week, I'm starting that new job on Monday. But today we're seeing this much differently. It also talked about the difference of people not wanting to work in traditional type work anymore. In other words, they weren't crazy about the set hours. They were looking for different things today that fills their needs, and they're not willing to work in the way that we've worked for many, many years. It is a change in the culture. It's a change in what people are wanting to do for a living. So, Sheryl, this is a big challenge, and people have got to put this behind them. Anything you would add in about the recruiting and the hiring challenge of the people that we serve?
People are just, they're like, as you say, they're walking away and they're willing to admit it. And then when you ask, usually there's nothing wrong with the company they left. It's just, well, I just wanted to change jobs, or either I was mad at John because he did whatever. Used to, we had to have really bad reasons to quit. People would work till they were just almost being abused.
Yeah.
It's not like that anymore.
Yeah. I was at a client location, and the client had stepped out for a minute, and someone that Sheryl had interviewed and had sent by for the interview showed up when I was there. So the clients called me. He said, "Will you go ahead and talk to him? I'll be there in about 10 minutes. And it was interesting because we asked him, are you presently employed? No. How long have you been unemployed? I left my last job about a week ago. And it's in my mind. It's like, wait a minute. Why did you quit? And then I said, can I ask why? He said, because they didn't give me any respect. They just didn't respect me. And this was not a young person. This was a person that I guess was in his mid to latter 50s, but it was a big thing. He said, people just didn't respect me. They didn't respect my words or what I would say. And often that's what happens is, and I don't think a lot of time it is actually a lack of respect. I think a lot of times we got a lot on our minds, and somebody wants to talk to you and just pulls you out of the blue. So the respect runs both ways. I think you get the respect of other people that you give, and you've got to be able to do that in order to have that respect to move forward. But these are the things that are out there. So as you go through these challenges, I'll tell you one that I envision, I see as a really big problem. We're in a bull market. Brandi, have you thought about what's going to happen if this bull market ceases and the phone stops ringing?
It's actually kind of funny you brought that up, because Jeremy and I were just talking about that the other night. It's coming. We can't sustain how we've been sustaining. I pray it's not another 2008, but it is coming.
Yeah, it is. And that's one of the things. And that's one of my big fears is the light switch turns off. Sean just added another good comment. The last 6 months, our market for new hires has changed drastically. Our local big corp businesses have raised their starting wages, and we're now looking at new hires and aren't getting the response we were. We're looking at raising our starting wage to hopefully get interest in our job post again. So, Sheryl, let me take that to you. Is this something that you're seeing happening with a lot of your clients in the hiring, where you're having to advise them that they're going to need to consider raising their starting wage?
Practically every client now has their starting wage raised from a year ago this time. And the thing is, when you do the search online for the wages that people are fitting in certain areas, you're having to pay more than they were doing when the last estimate was done. And so it just depends. The bad part about this is, can you sustain the wage increase? And so you have to rally and make it go one way or the other. Do you bring in more work to sustain the increase, or does that draw better employees that can work faster? The quality of the employees a lot of times doesn't change just because you raise the wages. And then the next elephant comes out, and that elephant is all the other employees expect a raise also, since they started, they're making where this person's going to be starting. So does it help get them in? Yes. But if you're not really careful, it opens a whole new can of worms.
Right. And that's what you got to be careful, which is the backlash of a decision you go through. Now, I'm going to direct this next question to Brandi. As I do this, I want folks to understand there's not a better office management person that can assist you than Brandi Biswell. But Brandi, would you agree that numbers are not your forte? You're not the numbers person there, correct?
They're not. As Sheryl was talking, I was thinking about because she's absolutely right. You have to be able to sustain those wages. And so you've got to look at what is your percentage. But if you asked me to look at our percentage, I would say go ask Jeremy. And I wanted to bring up Sheryl too, just because we brought up this part of wages and Sean brought up. Last night, my son had friends over and we were talking about their jobs and how much they make. And one of his friends is making $15 an hour at a pizza place. Another one's making $17 an hour at Target. So you do have to think about that when you're looking at your wages. You know, if I can go push carts at Target for $17 an hour, I'm probably not going to want to get up on a roof for $12 an hour.
Right. So you and Jeremy are discussing this already because in your company, that's Jeremy's side over there. Whenever we talk about the numbers and looking at that, you know, he's a big Dave Ramsey guy. You guys are debt free. You do all those kind of things. But it is bouncing. And Sean just gave us another. He says, yes, right. Sustaining that increases, I feel the challenge. And yes, we're going to raise our other technicians' wages as well. What makes this change even more challenging? But here's the thing I'm going to add into it. A lot of times we look at the following. We have to raise our rates. We have to raise what we charge in order to be able to do these things. But I want to encourage people to look at something else. And this is an area that both Brandi and myself work with on our mutual clients and the clients we work with alone. So she has some she works one-on-one with. I have some I work one-on-one with. And we have some companies that we both work with. And that is the matter of waste. Because what we see is many times companies are dumping, and this is no lie, 10, 15, and higher percentages of their gross are going in the waste pile every day. So one of the things you got to look at is how do you increase the bottom line? Because this has got to come from the bottom line. And is it going to take more sales? Is it going to take more customers? Or is there a lot of waste in the company where you can conserve a lot of money? Because when you look at it, think for just a minute what your gross income is. And if you had $1 million business on a 10% waste factor, that's $100,000 a year that's being flushed down the drain. So what you got to do is get this in control, and you got to be able to set your goals for doing this. The goal we look at is less than 1% of gross of waste. And that is not easy to get there. And it's going to take tracking, and it's going to take measuring, and it's going to take costing it. And then you got to cost out what's the cost of sales to compensate for waste. And when you start looking at all this, he has a great different things going on. So waste is something that we look at an awful lot in our businesses and in our consulting and our coaching practices in order to get there. And Sean, you just said something there. Mark Stoner had a great podcast on waste. Well, let's go a little deeper. Whenever Mark Stoner started looking at waste, Mark Stoner was my client. And I can remember when we got Ashbusters, who's who you're talking about, we got them started to looking at waste. It was hard. It became part of the morning meetings and this daily tracking and measuring, because what you got to do, you cannot improve until you track it and you measure it to know how you're going to improve it. So Sheryl, what other thoughts would come to your mind about prepping for 2022?
You know, my main thing is just to take the time to do it. It sounds like, oh no, one more thing to do. But I was always taught, do the most important thing first. And actually right now, the most important thing is to figure out what the next important things are going to be. Because if you don't, you're flying by the seat of your pants again. And we're going to be having the same conversation the same time next year. And everybody's going to be sitting in their own section that they are in right now. But because, like I say, nothing is written in gold that 3 months from now it's going to be different or it's going to be the same. Is the chain of supplies going to open up? Is the economy going to change? Are we back? Are we going to go through another bad flu season, COVID season, whatever's out there? We don't know. All you've got to do is, and one analogy that came up earlier while one of you were talking, I've done lost that track of thought. But one of your things, Jerry, is telling people to get this blank canvas and look at it 5 and 10 years out. I suggest you take that blank canvas now and put December of 2022 on it and draw the picture that you're looking for.
Right. And what she's talking about, this is common whenever I'm talking and someone calls me. And what we do is in that conversation, when they're asking about how to get to their dreams, is I tell them, I want you to take a blank wall and paint a picture, mental picture on that wall of what you want your business to look at in 3 years. And I think Cheryl's dead on the money. You actually need to do that for the end of next year. Now, just in the comments, I don't know if you saw this come up. I just posted a link in the comments. And what that is a year-end self-analysis sheet. And I haven't re-upped it. I'll do some changes before the end of the year. But every year I go in and I make this form up. And it's all about the things to check within your business. Now, we also use in that what we call the wheel of success, which actually came from the Ziegler process, the wheel of life. And what this is, it breaks the business down into the spokes and the various things that are going to make you successful. And it helps you track down the weak areas. Because usually as you go through this self-analysis, what do? You find out that you may be super strong in marketing, but in your SOPs, you're very weak. And I have this conversation just about every day about standard operating procedures and how mistakes occur. And every time there's a mistake, there's 3 answers. Number 1, there is no system. Number 2, the system is wrong. Or number 3, someone hasn't followed the system. And Brandi, how many times have you heard me say that in your time working with us? It's like it's almost
a zillion.
like a zillion times, and I keep saying the same things over right now. And see, Sean just added another good comment. I feel this is a huge challenge we are facing as well. What is the priority right now? What should I be doing with my limited time? A lot of times I don't have that answer. And Sean, where that answer comes from is you got to make a priority list. This is where I think people really mess up is things are almost like a shotgun. And we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And what you got to do is what's that number one thing? Right now, Sean, what I would encourage you to do is look at what is the number one thing that you could do that would change everything. If you could pull all of your challenges out and select that one thing. And sometimes you got to kind of turn a blind side to all those other things that pull and tug from you. Brandi, a lot of times when you're working with office people, we find a lot of times that somebody's very unproductive. We'll say they have a bookkeeping job and they're operating as a bookkeeper, but they're also working as a CSR. So they're working on the books, but the phone rings. So when the phone rings, got to pick it up. Now, at this point, I got to get my mind back to where I was. And about the time I get my mind back, the phone rings again. Is that unproductive, Brandi? What would you tell somebody if you observed them doing that?
Yeah, no, I don't allow them to do that. In fact, I tell them to make a sign and hang on their door, or if they're maybe in like a shared space, just send out a message to everybody and say, hey, for the next 45 minutes, I'm going to be working on bookkeeping, because mistakes happen if you're going back and forth. And I would ask Sean, what was the thing that caused him the biggest pain? We talk about that a lot in CVC. What was your pain point this last year? Look at that, and that might also be a good place to start.
But this is where the tracking comes in, because this, Brandi, the most painful thing will always be the last thing that happened. What hurt you on Tuesday, you will forget on Thursday because something else took it over. That's why I love whiteboards in office, where you've got this stuff right in front of you and you listed down what that's going on. And see what happened. It's kind of like what I've gone through the last couple of weeks. And I'm going to share with you, I've been working for a couple of weeks on a safety review program for technicians. Now, this started because a client asked me, he said, Jerry, we need you to do a safety program on respirators. And what it was about, what started this, Brandi, was he had been to a doctor's office and there was a sign there talking about beards on men and how different facial features and how different face shapes control if the respirator will be efficient, correct? Okay.
Yes.
So from that point, I started developing up what I called a safety review that we're developing up and that will be go over everything. And it was really unreal because I sent this out for comments several times now. And at this point, it was like I was trying to touch on all the safety points within a technician's life. And right now, I'm up to like 60 points. I mean, this thing has built. Brandi and Sheryl both participated, and Brandi got it. She suggested one the other day, and Bart Ogden looked at it. He gave me a suggestion about hazard communication, about labeling. But we're going to be recording that program tomorrow. Myself and Robbie Murphy is going to be a co-presenter on this, and he's a young rising star that really is good. So he's going to be teaching that course with me tomorrow. But it's how things can build as you go through because they're not set into stone. And I'd say Brandi and Sheryl probably got tired of looking at this Think It Safety program because I've sent it out for comments over and over and over. In fact, I added one this morning and I hadn't even sent it out. You know, I forget what I added in. The one I added this morning was, gravity wins, okay, which is talking about if you fall, the gravity is going to win is the way it is. So, Brandi, what about you? You got any additional thoughts on this?
I think the biggest thing is just taking the time, like take the time to sit down and do this. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time. You know what caused you pain in your business last year. You know what went well and what went to hell. So just jot those down. If you're a bigger company, then I do actually recommend that you spend some time asking your employees what they think. Getting their input into this because they may have a different perception than you. But the biggest thing is just now is the time to do it. Jerry, what we saw a lot last year was we saw a lot of clients, myself included, who switched over to Service Titan. And I started talking to Service Titan in, I think, January. Yeah, it must have been January. And they were telling us they weren't going to be able to implement us until like July, August. And I said, then I can't sign up with you. That's too late. I won't have enough time to get everybody trained and get everybody on board. So they actually worked with us and moved us our onboarding date up to March, which was perfect. But we had some clients that weren't so lucky in that. And so they're trying to implement in August or September. And then October comes and we all know it's chaos and nobody knows how to use the program.
Right. And some of those are now paying a monthly fee. And it all involved, which, you've got implementing a software program. So, Brandi, it's not easy, is it?
No, I mean, Service Titan is probably the best program out there on the market. And it's not easy because it's so robust.
Yeah, but it is. And it takes a lot of steps in order to go through there. And, in the industry, Brandi is probably the leading expert on Service Titan right now and was able to implement it. How long did it take you to implement and take that system live? Brandi, do you remember the time frame?
Yeah, I mean, they have like a 7-week calendar that we followed from onboarding to being live. And we stuck with that calendar and followed it really closely. But even every day, I still learn new things about it. I still learn new information every day about it.
You're learning a lot about Service Titan right now. Okay.
Maybe more than I want to know.
Yeah. So anyway, Sean just posted another good one, and that's a hard thing, Sean. And I understand being able to isolate it down to that one thing. Yeah, that is tough. It is so tough. It's unreal. But this is what you've got to do. So Sean's got another one. We switched to Service Titan over the summer, which was still too late because we did not have enough time to train, or rather, I didn't have enough time because I am still in the field. So when you look at that, with Sean's case, this is a challenge. He's working in the field, and working in the field and running a business is a hard place to be. It is and he's not the only one. Because of turnover issues and other things, there's a couple clients I have. They're in the field and they're operating businesses, and it is a tough situation. But you have to be able to come up with that priority, Sean. That's all I can tell. Sheryl, is there any advice you would give Sean?
Main thing, Sean, Two things, pad and pencil. That's got a little whiteboard. It's it's not a whiteboard. It's called a Remarkable, and you can write it out. And Brandi believes in the paper ones. I kind of like these. I can write it. And Jerry, I guess Jerry would attest to how many hours he sees me with this little pad. But you can write on it and then email it to yourself. You can. I'm not advertising the pad, but make sure just write it down, because unless you're a whole lot better than the three of us on this program right now, your memory will not hold long enough to get everything that you're thinking about down. So just jot it down and then mark out what's not important. Write over what is. You'll eventually begin to see a rhythm coming up. And once that rhythm starts, then you can start moving. Once you get number one, number two comes easy. It gets easier as you proceed.
Right. Now, one of the things I suggest also, and I've used this with a lot of clients over the years, and that is to assemble what I call the frustration book. And a frustration book is where you carry a composition book, a spiral bound notebook. Brandi, what do y'all call those? We call them composition books. What do you call them in Kansas City?
I mean, I think they're called composition books, but mine that I use for all my office people, it's a task list. But I like where you're going with it about writing down the pain points.
So here's what we're going to do. As you go through, you carry this with you everywhere you go. And what you're going to do is, I want you to write down what every time something frustrates you, every single time. And I want you to write this down in ink. And the reason I want you to write down ink, don't erase it. And then what you do this frustration book for about 2 weeks. And then you take a look at this frustration book and you start looking, how many times did the same thing frustrate you? How many times did you go through that pain? Because here's what you got to make up your mind. And it goes down to what my point of view is that I developed as I was going through speaker training, which is change can be painful. And it's up to you to decide, do you want to continue in the pain that you're in or go through the pain of change? And that's life. And that's what you got to do. But you got to isolate this direction out of where you're going to go and how you're going to do it. And that's going to take sitting down. It's going to take visualizing. It's going to take building your strategy. And once you build the strategy, it's going to take the implementation of the strategy. Because Brandi, if all it is words on paper, what's it worth?
It's worth nothing. But Jerry, I think everything that you're talking about, I was sitting here as you're talking, thinking it's all leading back to kind of what we talked about in the beginning. It's why everybody needs a coach, because a coach can help take a look at that piece of paper and tell you where you need to focus.
Yeah. So Brandi, let me ask you a question. Just like myself, you do on-site analysis of business, right? Where
Correct.
You would walk in, all of a sudden, you're walking in, and the only thing you may have never met this person face to face. You've had some emails, you had a phone call conversation, and you show up there at the job site. And I don't know, I carry a tablet with me and I start making these notes as I go in. And you look at this, and the problems are obvious. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Are the solutions usually obvious to you?
To me, they are, but to the client, they're not.
Right. But do the clients look at this as it's painful?
Oh, for sure. For
They
sure.
do. That's what I mean. Whenever
Any change is painful.
Any change will always be painful. And Sheryl, same way with you. As you go through people and developing their hiring strategies, their recruitment strategies, you're probably having to tell them, you've got to make some changes if we're going to be successful. How do they accept these changes?
Not always real well, because it's easier to look at something else as the problem instead of that you might be part of the problem. A lot of times when an employer can't keep employees, we have that hard conversation of, could part of this problem be you and the way you respect, we'll use that word, the way you communicate with these people? Do you know what they're thinking? As I'm going to step over onto a behavioral analysis assessment of knowing what your client, which is in your position, or the employee, which is I'm looking at, are you aware of what they're thinking, of how they need to be approached? And a lot of times we don't think of that. We think of the problem that we're working on, not the problem that we might be helping cause.
Right. And this morning I had a call with a client, and it was all about they decided that it's time to hire a general manager, Brandi. So you're aware, Cheryl's aware I'm had this conversation because she got involved in it. But they've reached this point that they're ready to start the exit plan from the business. And part of the exit plan means they want someone to take over and operate this business. So earlier today, that was what the conversation was all about. So what I did, I went through all the details we got to do to procure the right person, which is we got to have a complete job description of what your expectations are. We got to spell out, and then we got to inspect for what we expect, and we got to hold accountability from that point. We got to do a DISC assessment. The reason we're doing a DISC assessment, we got to detect, does he have the behavior patterns to be successful? Does he also have a behavior pattern that's going to be compatible and can work with the ownership of the company, so we don't have a explosion later on where everything implode together? And going through all these different steps. And they've already talking to a guy. And so I've encouraged them that they have a joint interview, and Sheryl do an interview with him and ask the questions she would ask. And then then I'm going to watch that. And then I will probably, since this is a high level position, I'll come in and we'll have a 4-person conversation, the husband, the wife, the owners, and then the new guy and myself. But it was also, are you coachable? That was one of the things that we talked about with Scott today, where we've got to clearly identify, because this whole thing, you just went through training to get your coaching certification. Am I correct?
Correct.
And you're a really good student of human nature.
I love being a student.
So did you learn much in this training to get that certification, Brandi?
Oh, so much. I mean, the skills that I walked away with, it's crazy how much I learned.
That's what I mean. Sheryl, same way. A couple of years ago, you decided you wanted to become a Ziegler trainer and coach. First, you went through training to be a trainer. Then you went through another week of training to become a Ziegler coach. And you're a very astute person, very good with reading other people, being able to communicate effectively, always have. But through this, did you learn methods and processes to help you be successful?
I did. And a lot of times, as probably Brandi knew a lot of these things, you know them, but they're in the back. You don't realize they're that important to someone else, brings them to the foreface of what you're doing. And if you go into something and don't learn, you've wasted your time.
That's it. So we're coming up to an end. So Brandi, anything you would add into today's episode before we check out of here today?
Well, I know Sean's watching. I think he's already identified one of the places he needs to go, and that's Service Titan. So I think that's one of the things that he's already identified that he needs to work on. And I would just say, if you're watching, just sit down, get your pad out or whatever that thing is that Sheryl talked about, and just write down some things for 2022. You'll be so happy you did.
Yeah, Sheryl, show Brandi what that thing is you're talking about again.
It's called a Remarkable. It looks like a little iPad thing, but you can write on it, and then you save it, and you can email it. You can do you can handwrite it, and you hit a button and it'll take it to text. So you don't have to retype it.
Nice. So, I actually saw somebody using one of those the other day, and I thought, what is she doing with that thing? Like, what's the point if you're erasing it? But I guess she was emailing it.
Well, that's what she was doing. Like I said, the Christina, her personal assistant, that's what she does every day. She makes up this whole list, and instead of being on a piece of paper, it's electronic. So you're texting that to her, Sheryl, or you're printing it, or what?
I can text it. Usually for this, I print it. But what I like is sometimes when my mind's thinking, my hands don't work as neat as they should. And so I like for her to be able to read it, so I can convert it to a written printed form, and it just makes it so much easier for me. I can do thinking while I'm sitting in front of the TV without having a computer in front of me. Just sit there and make my little notes, throw it over, and it just, for me, it works. It does. The only thing it doesn't do, it doesn't have a backlight. It drives me nuts because when it's dark, I can't do anything with it. But I use it like you do your pads, Brandi, because I not because I'm old, I never could remember everything. And I used to remember a lot more than I do now, but now I write it down because I don't want to forget it. And if at 8 o'clock of a night, I do not cut my computer on. That's just, unless it's an emergency, my computer's not coming on. I can make myself a little note and it'll be there tomorrow. I don't have to decide if I can wake up and remember it. I had, I know this may not be relevant, but many, many years ago, I actually had an Indian friend, and I mean like Pocahontas Indian friend, tell me one day, I told him, when I wake up, my mind goes into overdrive. I don't care what time it is. And that's when all my good thoughts come in. And he said, well, what do you do? I said, well, I've got a tablet beside my bed and I flip on the light and I write myself a note. He said, no, that's not how we do it. He said, the way you do it, keep a pad and pencil there, reach over and just have a pad big enough you can write a few words on, and then go back to sleep.
Okay.
So always remember to write it down.
Right. So Sean just replied in, Brandi, I think you've helped him out tremendously already on it. Thank you all for answering my questions, finding so many great ideas and suggestions. Definitely going to implement the frustration book with our whole team. So Sean, I'm glad this has been a time of value for us. So let me tell you guys what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Next Friday, this is going to be an episode you don't want to miss. The guy we are going to be interviewing has been called by John Meredith as the most interesting man in the chimney service industry. He has recently sold his business. And what he's going to be talking about, and this is going to be the subject matter, which is, what would you tell your younger self? And our guest is going to be none other than Bob Ferrari from California. And like I said, Bob's going to share with you. And be honest with you, I had a conversation with Bob probably 11 years ago when I was going in the coaching industry that really helped me out some of the things. So I want to tell you, you don't want to miss next week because Bob's going to give you advice. He has learned from many, many years of experience, and he speaks with wisdom and a very unique way of phrasing it every single time. So you don't want to miss that episode. And then the following week, we have Patty Lawrence on, who's done this show before. And I've asked Patty to appear, and our subject matter is going to be how to fund equipment purchases. And in this, we're going to talk about taking the money out of your reserve funds, or is it better to lease it? Is it better to lease purchase it? Is it better to finance it? Now, this is going to open up some eyes because, like I said, I know that Jeremy and Brandi are they are guys that they believe in debt free. So this is going to be interesting for Brandi because it may shoot a different light that they may see, hey, maybe we don't want to pull that money out of our reserve funds. There may be ways that we can do this better. It could be from the tax savings. It could be from any number of things. So Brandi, what do you think about the lineup over the next couple of weeks with those two subjects?
I'm excited. Bob Ferrari he's so smart is how I would say. He's just very, very highly intelligent. And then Patty works with a lot of our clients, and I know she does a great job.
That's it. So it's going to be about those things. Sheryl, what's your thoughts about these next 2 weeks of what we got coming?
Well, we seem to have a lot of good people that have come through here, but do we ever back them back to back like this? Not all the time. I think with the knowledge these two people have, it can move some people to the next step.
And that's our whole reasoning for doing this broadcast. We do this broadcast as an outreach from our company, CVC Success Group. We are here to help people. We'll be glad to set up a phone call. You can see all of our email addresses on the screen right now. And you may find that perhaps Sheryl may be the best person for you to talk to initially. It could be Brandi, could be myself, or you may want a joint call where we can set it up with two of us or all three of us in order to get you the best help. There's no charge for that. There's no obligation. What it is for us to get to know you and for you to get to know us, because just possibly we may have the answers for you. It's just like Brandi did a video this week, which is hard to get Brandi to do, folks. I'm going to tell you, when I tell Brandi I need her to do a video, she just really, I have to really sweet talk her to get those videos. It's really tough. But anyway, it's like she put forth. Do you have an office operating at the efficiency and the effectiveness you want? And if you don't, give her, set up a call with her and see if she can help you. Same thing, you got hiring challenges, you got recruitment challenges, or you may just have challenges in your personal life. I mean, let's face it, working together as husband and wife, look at Brandi, it's not the easiest role. And the best person on here for that challenge is that lady sitting right on the bottom of the screen. Her name's Sheryl Eisner. Because as you can imagine, if she can live with me, she has pretty well figured out how to deal with different types of personalities. Brandi, quit grinning so big when I said that, okay? So anyway, we appreciate you joining us as always. We are CBC Success Group. Our mission is to help you. We appreciate you joining us this week as always. Please feel free to share this out for others. If you feel there's value here, please be sure and give it to others. And with that, we'll see you next week on the next episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success